Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Gacharya. Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Acharya. Ashtotara Shata Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thy Gauda Premanande. All glorious to assembly devotees. All glorious to assembly devotees. All glorious to assembly devotees. All glorious to lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glorious to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasan Tato Jayam Udirayen Nasupraya Shirabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, the creative impetus, Chapter 2, the activities of Maharaj Agnidra, text number 4.
Text number 4.
Oh, sorry, 3. Text number 3.
Okay. Thought so. Shall I go for it?
Yes, please.
Tadabalabhya Bhagavan Adipurushaha Sadasi Gayantim Purvachittim Namapsarasam Abhipayayam Asa.
Word for word translation. Tat, that. Upalabhya, understanding. Bhagavan, the most powerful. Adipurushaha, the first created being within this universe. Sadasi, in his assembly. Gayatim, dancing girl. Purvachitim, Purvachiti. Nama, named. Aparasam, the heavenly dancing girl. Abhiyapayam. Oh, sorry. There's a Abhiyapayam asa. Sent down. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Understanding King Agnidra's desire, the first and most powerful created being of this universe, Lord Brahma selected the best of dancing girls in his assembly, whose name was Purvachiti, and sent her to the king. Purport. In this verse, the words Bhagavan Adipurusha are significant. Bhagavan Adipurusha is Lord Krishna. Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Lord Krishna is the original person. In Bhagavad Gita, he is also addressed by Arjuna as Purusham Adyam, the original person, and he is called Bhagavan. In this verse, however, we see that Lord Brahma is described as Bhagavan Adipurusha. The reason he is called Bhagavan is that he fully represents the Supreme Personality of Godhead and is the firstborn creature in this universe. Lord Brahma could understand Maharaj Agnidra's desire because he is as powerful as Lord Vishnu. As Lord Vishnu, situated as Paramatma, can understand the desire of the living entity, so Lord Brahma can also understand the living entity's desire. For Vishnu, as a via medium, informs him. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye, Lord Vishnu informs Lord Brahma of everything from within his heart. Because Maharaj Agnidra specifically worshipped Lord Brahma was pleased, and he sent Purvachati, the Apsara, to satisfy him. Om Agyanitimirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Minitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadatmayam Dadati Svam Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesva Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanuside Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Hansha Kalpatarum Bistya Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Akun Kodati Vachalam Pangulang Dedegirim Tadkripa Taramham Vande Shiguram Dinatarinam Vagisha Yasya Vadane Lakshmi Yasya Chavakshi Yasya Ste Hridaye Sambit Tam Nishim Ham Maham Vaje. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, the following verse at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrit edesha arjuna tishtati. And here he's confirming that he is actually situated within the heart of every living entity. And actually, it's only by Lord Krishna's sanction that we can fulfill any desires. And he provides all the paraphernalia, he provides the atmosphere, and he will provide the body in order for us to pursue those desires and in order for us to ultimately fulfill those desires. And this is confirmed later on, earlier in the Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Shariram yap avapnoti yachchapi ukram ishvaraha grinit vaitani samyanti vayur gadam ivasayat. And in the purport to this shloka, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about how, according to the way we interact with this world, and according to the way we interact with ourselves, it determines where we'll be going next. If we are acting in the animal consciousness, we will attain the body of like a cat and dog. And if we are acting with godly qualities, then we can qualify ourselves to ultimately attain the body of a demigod. But if one is existing in a consciousness of Krishna, then they can actually attain Krishna Loka. And the word that's being used in this verse I just quoted is gada. And that literally means that our conception of life and the desires that we carry in order to maintain that conception of life, it's like a fragrance. And that fragrance is developed based on the way we interact with the world. It says, Purusha prakriti stotihi Bhongte prakriti janguna, karanam guna sango syat, sadasadyoni janmasu. In other words, our desires and longings are influenced by the way we interact with the world, and due to that interaction with the world actually begins to influence us. So we are not independent in our desires, and we're not independent in our way of living. Everything that we like, everything that we dislike, it is due to the way that we've interacted with this world, and the world responding to the way we've interacted with it. And as one becomes influenced by lower modes of material nature, they are practically forced to behave and act in a certain way. This is why we see animals, if there's a piece of food, they'll practically be ready to fight for it, without considering that there may be enough for all of them to share. And in Kali Yuga, we see that this is also the case. Although there may be enough for everyone, due to being influenced by a lower mode of material nature, people are forced to act in a way which is diametrically opposed to their original nature as a servant of Krishna. They're carried by the modes of the material nature as if helplessly. And this is why we sing in the morning, Samsara Dava Nalita Loka. Because this conception of life, of being pulled by the modes of material nature in different directions, is like a forest fire. And the only way we can really put out this forest fire is receiving guidance from a higher source. So our desires in this world generally can be understood in four different kinds of categories. They can be understood in the realm of artha, which means material wealth and opulence. We chase after a situation in which we can organize the material elements in such a way that we can maintain an illusion of eternality, maintain an illusion of satisfaction within the jurisdiction of the temporary material world. So this is one kind of desire one can cultivate. And then another desire that one can cultivate is kama, or sense gratification. One can pursue the life of being happy through allowing the senses to interact with their sense objects. But we understand in the Bhagavad Gita, yehi samsparsaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evite advayantanta kaunteya ramate nate su ramate Buddha. That when this happens, when one tries to interact with the world for the purpose of sense gratification, actually within that interaction of the senses meeting the sense objects, it's actually like dukkha yonaya. It's actually the womb of suffering. So this is another kind of desire that one can chase after, and if one has been conditioned to chase after this, despite the suffering that comes with it, one will still think that there's satisfaction. And the example that's given in the Srimad Bhagavatam is like a camel chewing on thorns. The camel is chewing on thorns in its mouth, but in its thinking it's getting such a nice taste from it. But actually the taste is just a taste of its own blood. So similarly, that's what the world of sense gratification is like. It's like chewing on thorns. It's really a miserable circumstance. And you see this, if you just go out on Garnett Boulevard, you see that people are chasing this illusion of sensory satisfaction. And you practically see that the whole atmosphere is just polluted with a fragrance of misery. You know, there's people lying on the street, and there's people who are getting arrested. I mean, practically every other night we hear sirens, going to that particular street in order to deal with what happens when the senses interact with their sense objects. And nothing but misery. So we can practically see this, but if we have become illusioned to think that this is happiness, then we won't be able to see it. And then another kind of goal or desire one can cultivate is dharma. One can be desirous to be very religious. One can desire to be, a very pious person that's very dutiful in following the injunctions of the Vedic literature. And then finally there's moksha. One could become so frustrated with this world of dukkhalayam ashashvatam that they could ultimately desire to want to leave it. But generally that understanding is I have to annihilate myself or I merge into a white light for the sense of my own satisfaction. And so that's also not the best standard. So generally due to the influence of Kali Yuga, people desire really only artha and kama. And in order to fill these desires, people would previously worship demigods in order to achieve them. But nowadays, we don't even see people approaching demigods for the purpose of being materially successful or even spiritually successful. They think that, I met this boy yesterday actually on book distribution to kind of sum up the mentality of the materialists. I approached him and I said, we're sharing books on meditation. He's like, I'm not so much into meditation, I'm into manifestation. Basically means he wants to take the position of being Krishna. He wants to create his own reality for his own enjoyment, and he thinks that he's completely independent in his ability to be able to create that atmosphere for himself. But previously, people had the understanding that even if I want to live in the material world and try to enjoy within this world, I have to approach higher authorities in order to do so. But we see, due to the influence of Kali Yuga, there's not even a conception of approaching a higher authority. And if there is any conception of approaching a higher authority, it's like worshiping people like your boss. You bring them donuts once a week, and that gradually gets you a promotion. So this is the nature of Kali Yuga. And even though these desires were previously existing in other ages, they were done in a more refined way. But now it's done in a completely degraded and disgusting kind of way. But we're so fortunate because we've been given the Srimad Bhagavatam in this age. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is not interested in accommodating these material desires we may have in relationship to this temporary world of dukkhalayam, ashashvatam, misery and temporality. Rather, the Srimad Bhagavatam is interested in freeing the living entity from desires which are materially motivated. Dharma projita kaipadrota paramon nirmatsaramam satam. The Srimad Bhagavatam, at the very beginning of it, in the second verse, it's kicking out all processes of spiritual life which are incongruent with the conclusion of pure devotional service. And anything that doesn't directly relate with devotional service, it's not interested in. So this is why in the second canto we see that the Srimad Bhagavatam, in a sense, it's willing to accommodate the desires, but do it in such a way that those desires are ultimately extinguished. Whereas if you try to pursue these desires within the category of other Vedic literatures, although you may pursue the desire, you may not necessarily become free from it. Whereas in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it boldly declares, akama sarva kamo va moksha kama udaradi tivrena bhakti yogena yajata purusamparam. That whether you are akama, without any material desires, or whether you are sarvakama, full of material desires, or whether you're mokshakama, desiring liberation, one should engage in tivrena bhakti yogena. And this word tivrena is very fascinating. It basically means extremely focused or concentrated. It's just like if you get like a magnifying glass and you put it in the sun, and it concentrates all of that light into one particular place, and you can literally create a fire through that concentrated light. So the word tivrena means very focused and determined devotional service. And if one can engage in this determined devotional service, despite the fact they may have desires in relationship to this material world, one can be gradually purified of those desires. And the example of this is in the life of Dhruva Maharaj. Dhruva Maharaj, he was a young prince, about 5 years old, when one day his father was sitting on his throne, and the father, he had two wives, Suruchi and Suniti. Now, Suruchi was the favorite wife, and Suniti was Dhruva Maharaj's mother. So they both had sons, and Dhruva Maharaj's brother was sitting on King Uttanapad's lap, and, giving affection to his son like a father does. And naturally, Dhruva Maharaj, just being a young 5-year-old boy, he also wanted to reciprocate with his father and experience that relationship. But when he went to sit on his father's lap, his stepmother, or half-mother, Suruchi, said, You're never going to be able to sit on this lap. The only way that for you to be able to sit on your father's lap is for you to worship Lord Narayana, die, take birth again in my room, and then that way, that's the only way you're going to be able to receive the affection that my son has been receiving. This is actually quite offensive. She was basically telling Dhruva Maharaj that he had to die in order to have a relationship with his father. So Dhruva Maharaj, being a Kshatriya, was very, very angry at this statement. And he became even more angry because his father didn't even respond. He kind of just took a neutral stance. So Dhruva Maharaj went to his mother Suniti, and when he approached his mother Suniti, he said, "Mother, is this true? Am I not able to sit on my father's lap? Do I really have to worship Lord Narayan in order to do this?" And Suniti said, she's a very simple woman, and she said, "Yeah, that's actually correct. Your father, it's the truth that Suruchi is actually the favorite wife. I'm second class in comparison to her. So I don't know how you can attain Narayana, but I have heard that if you go to the forest and you seek Narayana there, you can find him." So Dhruva Maharaj, being very, very determined to outwit his father, developed the desire to have a kingdom greater than his father, and not only his father, but his great-grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, and his great-grandfather, or his father, Lord Brahma. So he wanted to have the kingdom of greater than that of Lord Brahma. So with this desire, he went into the forest. And when he went into the forest, he was so determined to find Lord Narayana that, just as we're reading here, that the Lord within the heart can respond to the desire of the living entity, the Lord responded to the desire of Dhruva Maharaj and actually sent Narada Muni to, what's the word I'm looking for? Intervene. He came to intervene with Dhruva Maharaj in the forest. So Dhruva Maharaj was walking into the forest, and Narada Muni arrived, and he tried giving him some good instructions. He said, actually, one should be very tolerant of insult, and one should learn to be very equal in their interactions with all people, and not become so agitated by the circumstances. And besides, you're just a 5-year-old little boy. Don't take this so seriously. Go back home, go play, and just be a nice little 5-year-old boy. And Dhruva Maharaj says, your instructions are very good, and I appreciate them, but you have to understand, I have the nature of a Kshatriya. I can't accept these instructions. Now, if you know how to attain Lord Narayana, you can tell me, but if you don't, please kindly step out of the way. I'm going to continue on my search. This was actually a test Narada Muni gave to Dhruva Maharaj. He was testing his sincerity, and seeing him passing the test of his sincerity, Narada Muni initiated him with a mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And he told him to chant this mantra, perform deity worship, and follow a certain set of principles in order to attain the ultimate goal. So Dhruva Maharaj did this. He sat in the forest, he constructed a deity out of mud and clay. He was eating only fruits and roots, and he was gradually diminishing the amount he was eating and sleeping, to the point where his austerities were so powerful that when he would inhale, the air of the universe would be extracted from the universe, and the demigods weren't able to breathe. And being so powerful, the demigods had to approach Lord Narayana and said, this boy is worshiping you, and he's actually causing a lot of anxiety within the universe because of his austerities. So Lord Narayana, being attracted by Dhruva Maharaj's austerities and the appeal of the demigods, approached Dhruva Maharaj and gave him darshan. It's explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Dhruva Maharaj was meditating, chanting his mantra, meditating on the form of Vishnu within his mind, and then at one point his meditation broke because Lord Vishnu disappeared from his mind. So he opened his eyes, and Lord Vishnu was standing right in front of him. So Dhruva Maharaj, upon seeing Lord Narayana, immediately felt that what he had desired was completely foolish. He immediately felt that the desire to have a kingdom greater than his father or his great-grandfather was so foolish that he compared it to like glass. In comparison to receiving the darshan of Lord Narayana, he compared it to a jewel. So we can see from this pastime that even if we're polluted with some type of material desire, and even if we are approaching the Lord for a purpose which isn't necessarily the most pure, still, if we can somehow be connected with Sri Guru via the Guru Parampara and receive some valuable instruction in relationship of how to ultimately attain Krishna, then with due time, all the desires which are incongruent with the cultivation of pure devotional service can be eradicated from our heart, and we can be established in one point of desire, Vyasyatmika buddhir, being fixed one point of determination to attain the ultimate goal of life, which is pure devotional service unto the Lord. Because Krishna within our heart, he'll see our sincere effort, and he'll be interested to guide us in such a way that we can eventually serve with purity. This is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Tesam satata yuktanam bhajatam pratik purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayantite. That even if one is connected with a bona fide spiritual master, even if one is connected with some type of social institution in which the principles of pure devotional service are taught, even if all of these things are there, but still somehow we're not getting it, we can still make advancement through a sincere application of the process. And Krishna from within our heart will give us the intelligence on how to apply that process in the proper way, in such a way that it's pleasing to Him. So as long as we can somehow have some type of purity of purpose while applying the process of devotional service, being aware that maybe these aren't the best desires that I have right now, but I do know what the ultimate goal is. And if I can somehow apply the process sincerely, I can be eradicated of these desires in time. And that's actually what the Srimad Bhagavatam is trying to give us. It's trying to help us become eradicated from these desires of artha, kama, and moksha. Artha, dharma, karma, and moksha. And ultimately be situated in the ultimate goal of life, which is given by the Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prema Pumartha Mahan. That the ultimate goal of life is to become a prema bhakta, is to attain the ultimate goal of Krishna prema. And we can see that even if we don't understand 100% what we're doing, we can see that if we stick to the process sincerely, Krishna will become so merciful. He'll be able to gradually reveal the details of that ultimate goal. And we see this in the life of Gopakumar. Gopakumar was a simple little cowherd boy living in Govardhan. And he met this ecstatic prema bhakta, premi bhakta, who was known to be a wild man. He would just dance to the forest, chanting and dancing, had no fixed place of residence, and somehow Gopakumar received the mercy of this particular devotee. And so one day Gopakumar sat down with him, and this particular devotee, he whispered a mantra into his ear, and he gave that mantra, and upon giving the mantra to him, he gave him some slight instruction. He said, just chant this mantra. And Gopakumar received it, but then out of ecstatic love, the guru just disappeared. So Gopakumar received the mantra, and he didn't quite know what to do with it, but he knew he was supposed to chant it. So having faith in his guru, he began to follow the process. And by following the process, he began to move through different dimensions of the universe. It's explained that first he went to, I think he went to somewhere on the earthly planet, some like very pious city, and then he went to the abode of Lord Indra, the heavenly planets. And he would just keep chanting his mantra. And all these places that he passed through Indra Loka, he went to Jagannath Puri, he went to Brahma Loka, he went to Siddha Loka, he even went into the Brahma Jyoti and was living there for a short period of time. He existed in all these places. And then he gradually went to Vaikuntha, he went to Ayodhya. And along the way, he just kept chanting his mantra. He wasn't completely aware of what he was trying to achieve. But then once again, he had another interaction with his spiritual master, and his spiritual master gave him further instructions. And so his further instructions helped his goal become more detailed. And then gradually, he continued to chant his mantra, still not feeling completely satisfied with what he was achieving, even in Ayodhya and Vaikuntha. And then Narada Muni intervened again. And he gave him full detailed description of his ultimate destination, and that was of Goloka Vrindavan. And then Gopakumar, on his interest to Goloka Vrindavan, is so beautiful. Immediately, as soon as he entered into Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna said, Sridham, there's my friend Sarup. And he went running after him, and he embraced Gopakumar. And when Gopakumar was in Goloka Vrindavan, he felt completely satisfied. All of his desires were fulfilled. So this is the same for us. We may not necessarily be completely aware of the details of what we're seeking after, but we have some type of faith in it. So if we can somehow stick to the process and stick with what we understand how to do now and apply it sincerely, then all the details of that ultimate goal will be revealed by Krishna from within the heart and externally by the Guru. Om Tat Sat. It was 8:25 exactly. I have a note in class that I should stop at 8:25. So I stopped at 8:25 for the pleasure of Balaram. Hare Krishna. So if there's any questions or comments, yes, Maharaj.
Okay. Krishna enlightened Narada within, enlightened Dhruva within the heart. You gave so many examples how Krishna, enlivens and enlightens within the heart. Why a gradual process? Why doesn't he just, bam? Why go through all this song and dance? Just appear before me, enlighten me, let me see the spiritual world and, what the goal is, and it's over. Why prolong my suffering and cat and mouse?
Thank you, Maharaj.
If he's enlightening within the heart, why do it in drips and drabs? Do it in one shot.
Excellent question. And the pastime that immediately comes to mind in order to answer the question is the pastime of the Damodar Leela. Mother Yashoda, she was trying to bind Krishna because Krishna was acting very naughty. And he was stealing butter and yogurt, knocking down pots and creating quite a mess in Mother Yashoda's home. So Mother Yashoda decided one day that she was going to punish little Damodar. And when she chased after him, she wasn't able to catch him. And then finally she was able to grab him. When she grabbed him, she said, I need to punish this boy somehow. So let me bind him to the grinding mortar. So she gathered up some rope and she decided to bind Damodar to the grinding mortar. And so she got a normal amount of rope, and for whatever reason it was just 2 fingers too short. Just by a hair is too short. And she's like, well, that's strange. Anyways, I'll get some more rope. So she grabbed some more rope, and it still is a little bit too short. And so she gathered so much rope. I think the acharyas give like an exact amount of how much rope she gathered, but I don't know. I don't want to say anything that's incorrect. But I know she got a good portion of rope, but still it just wasn't binding. So she was trying to bind, and it just wasn't happening. And then finally, at one point, Krishna, seeing the hard work of Mother Yashoda, seeing her determination to serve Krishna in the mood of Vatsalya Ras, to bind him as a mother out of love, he finally reciprocated and was able to be tied. So the Acharyas, particularly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary, he explains that this is the life of a devotee, is that there's 2 things that go on in a devotee's life. The devotee's endeavor to serve the Lord, and then simultaneously Krishna's mercy to accept the service. So these 2 things need to be there. Krishna has good reason not to trust us. We've been turning our back from him for quite some time, and he has good reason and good reason to believe that we're not necessarily going to take advantage of his mercy if he does give it to us. So he wants to see us work for it. He wants to see us try. He's going to help us along the way. As it said, what's that verse? Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, no, what's that? No, 9th chapter, verse number 22. Oh my gosh. It's one of my favorite verses and it's slipping my mind right now. I will supply what you lack and preserve what you have. Ananyas Chaita Satatam. Ananyas Chintayanto Mam Ye Jana Parupasate. Tesam Nitya Biyukta Mam Yoga Ksema Vinamyaham. That I will preserve what you have and I will provide what you lack. So Krishna is ready to give us the association of devotees. Krishna is ready to give us the deity. Krishna is ready to give us so many things in order to help us make progress. But simultaneously we have to apply ourselves. And it's not that Krishna isn't making himself appear before us even in the drips and drops. We're actually in one sense receiving a flood. We have the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have the deities, we have the devotees, we have prasadam, we have the wonderful service of going out on Sankirtan and giving this process to other people, in which we can directly serve the mission of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So actually, we don't just have drips and drops, we're getting a flood. We may not necessarily have attained the darshan of Krishna yet, but by sticking with the process, if we can be patient, utsaha nischaya daryat, if we can just be patient in the process, and just as a mother, just as a woman comes together with a man and she wants to have the child, she meets with the man, and when they get married, and she wants the child, but she has to wait a little bit. For her to get married and demand a child immediately is not very logical. So she gets married, but by being married and desiring the child, it's understood that in due course of time, she will have a child. So similarly, we're connected with the process. The baby's in the womb, so to speak. And it's just a matter of time before we're able to see Krishna and have Bhagavat Darshan. Is that satisfying, Maharaj? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
So we've learned that the process, that's what we're following, it's a process.
Yeah.
And you finished by talking about the details of the ultimate goal will be revealed in the heart.
Yeah.
By following that process.
Yeah.
So the question is about those details and the ultimate goal, maybe specifically or an overview of what details are being revealed to us in our heart and what is that ultimate goal?
Sure. Well, a full understanding of this can be, and a full study of this is present in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But basically, we're trying to become aware of who we are in relationship to Krishna eternally. We're trying to become aware of what is that relationship, what is that service that I have, and what is my place within the realm of the spiritual world. And, who are the people... Oh, sorry. Who are the people that I'm under? Who are those individuals that are guiding me in my service? All of these things. It's a little bit of an esoteric topic. I don't want to go so much into excruciating detail, but just to speak kind of in broad strokes about it. Basically, we have an idea of who we are here, and there's lots of details in relationship to that idea. But actually, it's all temporary. But this world, as Maharaj nicely explained the other day in his class, is like we have our hand, and then if you look at the shadow of the shadow indicates that there's an actual hand. And all the details that are existing within the shadow, they're actually intensified in relationship to the original object. So if we have so many details in relationship to where we're at now, and the identity we've amassed ourselves with in our present circumstance and who we think we are, the details in relationship to the reality is far more greater. So becoming aware of all those details and a full understanding of this is present in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the Nectar of Devotion. Is that okay? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Comes up so many times. So if we, just as you were saying, we don't want to go too far into Sahaja and, what's my mythos group and, I'm just for God. Forget
I was thinking of Lord Chaitanya's preaching when he was on Manifest. And there's so many instances there, especially when he went to South India, where there was people who just saw him and heard the Harinam, and they became Prema Bhaktis.
And even they saw someone who'd seen it.
That's how he spread. So they went back to their villages, and the people were coming. So that's kind of a 2,000 watt example of what we have now at 120 watts. In other words, his movement is still going on. It's very potent. Like we've had so many instances recently of someone getting a book, and they're coming here, and then they want to join the ashram, but it's a female. So they went to Gainesville, they're joining the ashram. In other words, it's a very potent process, and it can cut through a tremendous amount of illusion and hesitancy, but it's still a process because the purification has to take place. And so that's what I get. Krishna, yes, he has the power to purify immediately, but now at this point, when he's not manifest on the planet in person, and Lord Chaitanya is there, they've left very potent ways in which we can quickly attain perfection even in this one life. But it's up to us to vivasya atmaka buddhi, to really do it, and become pure. Oh, and one other note: this pastime of Damodar. One thing that's very interesting, I remember reading it in a Krishna book when I first read it. I said, this is interesting because each of the different stages of the pastime is signaled by flowers falling out of Mother Yashoda's hair. When Krishna first comes, she's churning, and her chaplet falls down a little bit, and Krishna starts the whole thing by stopping the churning. And then she goes and then comes back and she's chasing him. When the flowers fall down, she catches him. And then when she's trying to bind him, she's getting so exhausted, and finally the flowers fall down and he agrees to be bound. So there's an element there of like an offering, of the flowers that is signaling when Krishna is finally moving it on to the end. And the amount of rope, Prabhupada says in the Krishna book, she took all the ropes that were available in the house and she tied them all together, and it was still 2 inches too short.
So, does anyone have any other questions or comments? Oh, well, thank you very much for allowing me to speak. Thank you for tolerating, and if I made any mistakes, please forgive me. Vanchakalpatrumvascha kripasindhudeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go to Premanandi. No, you give it to the people out there.